Hello fellow wanderers, this is Lendes and welcome to my channel. I've been asked a couple of times in co-op chats in game about build and fittings to use for the ships to do the T5, T6 and T7 encounters, and so I thought it might be useful for you guys to have a couple of tutorials video to help you understand what you can use and what are the basics for doing those anomalies and encounters. In this first video I'm going to show you a bit what is the ship I'm currently using. It is a bit of a typical one. It's relying on laser weapons, and I'm going to explain to you in a moment why I choose it and why it is so effective for encounters. So going to the fitting. So I'm using an Omen, which is an Amar ship, a Tier 5. It's fairly cheap. Last time I checked it was about 3.5 million if you want to buy one on the market, and it's a really sturdy ship. So this is why I went with this build. I did equipped with beam laser weapons. Beam lasers is a bit lower in terms of DPS than the pulse version, but the advantage is that they have an optimal range which is a bit higher. You can see here on the screen we have an optimal range of 22 kilometers and an accuracy fall of 8.6 kilometers, meaning that I can shoot between 30 to around roughly 12-14 kilometers without any significant impact on the DPS. Above that will be reduced by 50%, as you all know, in terms of the damage output. The only issue I have with the beam lasers is the tracking speed. So it means that frigates and destroyers, if they get below 12 kilometers, it's becoming really hard to actually hit them and do any significant amount of damage. So for PvP this might be an issue, and you should be very careful about fast ships which could be speed tanking you and basically dwindling down until you have no armor, no internals, and you would not be able to retaliate significantly. So I've got 4 of those beam lasers, so it means that I can basically deal a significant amount of damage. Currently I'm topping at a DPS of 115, which is, I would say, average for a cruiser. I've seen builds with higher DPS, but usually then it means that it is with very short range weapons and you need to go up close and personal, which is something that I wanted to avoid at all costs. I wanted this ship for PVE, for farming anomalies, and I wanted to be able to do that at range where I could limit, if not avoid, any damage, because I would be outside of the effective range of the enemy's weapon. If you look at the stat of the ship, so we got like 10k defense. It's basically more of an armor tank than a shield tank. I've got 2,400 in shields, and I got about 1.5 times more in armor with 3,200 in there. You will see in the build that I don't really care about being a shield tank or an armor tank. Basically I fitted modules so that I could do active tanking in both shield or armor, and that is because the difference that I have in there is not so significant, and basically as well because you don't really know what kind of weapon you will be facing in the field, and so being able to actively tank on the shield part where you will be able to avoid kinetic and explosive damage, and armor where you will be avoiding the EM and the thermal, is kind of useful combination in there. So that's for the high slot and the high level view of the ship. So if I go to the mid slot, basically I fitted stasis webifier. The webifier is really useful because it will slow down the ships when they reach this suboptimal range that I talked about earlier, below 12 kilometers, because the speed of the targeted ship will be dramatically reduced, and as well it will increase its overall targetability, and so it will be easier to hit it. And so once the ship enter your sort of dead zone, then you will be fired and you can continue to pound it down until it is completely destroyed. On the low rigs, so I went for MK5 medium armor repairer. This is really for active tanking in armor, and you have seen that this ship is basically more of an armored tank than a shield tank, but I got also the MK5 medium shield booster, which basically give me the flexibility to go tanking on shields or tanking on armor, depending on the enemy I'll be facing. The last module I have on the low slot is a capacitor battery. I went for a small one because basically I didn't have the money to buy a medium one, which is about 3 million landmark last time I checked, but the small one is fairly sufficient. As I get energy weapon, the drain on the capacitor is quite significant as you fire over time, and so getting the small boost of the capacitor is useful to recharge. It's also helpful, and you will see in the video where I will show you how to actually clean up the anomalies. That is also useful in synergy with the armor repair and shield repair, so that you can much more tank actively and recharging your armor or shields depending. So that's a very useful little device. It will be also useful when there are leechers around, because it will either negate them or reduce their efficiency, as you can get a boost in your capacitor energy. In terms of the internals, so I kind of went into exactly the same thinking and design as I went for the high and the low slot. So here I have a laser discharge, which basically will lower the capacitor needs for my beam lasers, which again will make my capacitor more stable over time and will enable me with the ship to stay longer on the field without having to warp out and try to recharge my capacitor. The second rigs that I have there is more for armor, and so I went for a transversal bulkhead, which gives me a bit more of structure hit points, 20% more. So it's useful as well if you're in a situation where both your armor and shield are depleted and you're low on capacitor. That might give you the room to warp out and escape and repair your ship later on. Other two internals that were fitted is again something to mitigate the higher capacitor cost and activation cost of the beam lasers, and so I went for the semiconductor cell prototype, which basically gives me a bit more capacitor. And the last one is again a capacitor recharge time bonus, which will help me regain energy over time and again be able to stay longer on the field and sort of be able to clear up anomalies without having to move out and warp to recharge or repair. So that's it for the build. I do hope that this is helpful, and please do not hesitate to comment. This is my first video, so I'm more than happy to see what I can do better and improve over time as I'm making those to help you progress in game.